So let me give you a quick tour of this model first, because it may seem a little complex at first, but I think in just a few minutes here, you'll get the essence of it. So some of you may have seen this before, even if that's great. Maybe there'll be comments you want to add to the chat. But this is called the leadership circle. You'll see the name of it here. The creators of this spent 20 years researching leadership as well. I think this is the best model out there, and many other executive coaches agree this is the gold standard for evaluating leadership. So this is what a blank model looks like. And so let me give you the tour real quick. Firstly, this horizontal bar is a defining characteristic. So what you want are these 18 behaviors. You want to be doing these. These are the creative behaviors. And what you want to be avoiding are these 11 behaviors. These are the pitfalls that us leaders, we stub our toes on. And if we get stuck down here in this reactive zone, you can already tell by the word reactive that it's not really going to be very good leadership. It's also quite tiring. And back to my initial teaser that leading, there can be an effective way to lead that's less tiring for you and that you don't experience as much burnout. Burnout happens when we're operating down here in this red zone. Okay, so that's step number one. We're top half, bottom half of this circle. Step number two, there's a polarity. On the one side of the circle, a leader needs to be focused on tasks. And there are two wedges here that focus on the tasks. So what is the thing we're going to get done? And when are we going to get it done by? And why are we even doing this? And who's doing what? And what's the system that's going to enable this work to get done? And let's be decisive and let's be strategic. Yes, these are all things that leaders can do and should do. And at this point in time, anyway, we'll see about the future, but until now, you still need humans to go and do the work. So how well do we relate with others? So these two wedges of the circle highlight behaviors that the research has found make us more effective at relating and engaging others to do the work. So you see this first wedge is about relating here, and the second one is about self-awareness, because leaders bring the weather and what we're bringing matters. So if trouble strikes and the leader freaks out, then everybody else freaks out. That's not that helpful. So the best leaders will balance these wings between relationship and task, and ideally balancing them 50-50. And there is definitely room for your own personal leadership style. And so that's the authenticity wedge here, where you can show up with your values and how you like to lead. And if you think about those best leaders, they were themselves. And they knew they had foibles, and they knew they had rough spots and blind spots, and they were okay with that. And that makes a person really magnetic in a way, when they've accepted themselves and they own that and they live that. So there's consistency there, which creates safety. I know who this person is. I know how they're going to react. And there's an inspiration, there's a modeling, which I think some of you pointed to as well. So the inner circle is a summary of the outer circle. This is just the titles of these different behaviors. And what you want to be doing is balancing task and relationship and be as conscious as you can be. Let me just say a few more words about this creative aspect here. You already said this, I think, in the chat. And if you think back to a famous Martin Luther King speech, for example, I have a dream. Okay, it's not reality yet, but here's the dream, and here's what the dream looks like, and come with me to the dream, and let's create this together. Leaders are in the business of creating something. You said growth earlier, of making something happen that didn't exist yet. So that's what we mean by creative here. We don't mean good at art or that kind of creative. So we're conscious, we're thoughtful, and we're generating something new. Okay, that's the quick tour number one. Let me pause here and see if there are any questions in the chat or if anybody wants to jump off mute and ask a question. Just checking, is the session being recorded? Yes, it will be recorded, and you'll be able to keep this mirror link. I don't plan to cut the access off, although if you want to grab screenshots, you totally can. Let me slide on over here. In summary, do more of these 18 top half behaviors and fewer of these bottom half ones. That'll create those conditions of leadership. And if you want to, this is a possible homework item after today. If you want to fill out the self-assessment, it happens to be free, you'll get back a portrait, maybe looks like this. So for this leader, we might see, okay, so there's some reactivity happening. Certainly there's more below the center line than there is above. So eventually we'd want to pull this in a little bit here. So we might pick one of these behaviors. Maybe back to Brody's point, this leader is a little too into perfection. There's a bar here at 60%. Between 30 and 60%, we're sort of a mixed bag of positive and negative here, because it's actually good to have high standards. Nothing wrong with high standards. That would be in the 30, 40, 50. Once we're at 90 or 100 here, though, we have to have perfection, and the perfection kind of has us by the back of the neck. And so we're a little bit out of control. We're a little reactive in that sense. So keep the high standards, get this down to 30 or so, and we'll be okay. You don't have to completely eliminate it and become some kind of saint, imaginary wise. But anyway, if you want to take your own self-assessment, it'll look something like that. And you'll get some insights. We have a hand raised. David Darko. In 5 seconds, you want to be above the center line. You want to be doing more of these 18 things. And whatever tendencies you have down here below, you want to be doing less of those things. Recognize those things in yourself and do some work to shift those. So I think the best models take things that you already know and organize them. And so we asked you earlier, what is it that the best leaders do? And you said a number of things. And so Brody here, maybe and team, has been quickly scribing those over from that Wordle. The best leaders, you said, were interactive, and they had discipline, and they had empathy, and they listened, and they were respectful, and they pushed you, and they listened to you, and they coached you. So all these behaviors, this sort of cloud of behaviors, can actually be roughly distilled, or more accurately distilled, into these behaviors. If we look at the task side, a good leader is decisive and acts on things and jumps on opportunities quickly and promotes a vision, gets people excited about that, and then makes strategic moves to get to that, highlight strategic options. We consider the system and how do people produce results sustainably. We don't want to use people up. We do want results for the greater community. We want to show up as ourselves as we're going through this. We want to make sure we're learners and we're modeling that. We want to be composed in under pressure. We want to be balanced. We'll go switch to green here. We want to be balanced and have a good work-life balance. We want to be somewhat selfless. We go back to that Lao Tzu quote. It's not about us. It's about the group. And just to fold in a question here, is it bad to be driven? No, it's okay to be driven. I'd say sort of halfway driven is good. But if you're too driven, then what usually happens is across the circle, you have a very low balance because you're driving. I'll get to the reactivity in a minute, but there's sometimes a tension across the circle where if you have a bit of an anchor on one side, it probably makes it hard to do some of these behaviors on the other side. It's one of the elegant things about it. And just to finish the tour on the top, we want to be emotionally intelligent and to be able to engage, respect, read people. We want to coach, mentor, develop. We want to be a good collaborator and foster collaboration among our people. We want to foster team play as well. And we want to show that we care. And a lot of you said that was on the list: caring, love, feeling valued, feeling respected. So these are some of the feelings and behaviors that you have to guide you here. Let me pause one more time if there are any questions.
Oh, no, I actually do have a question. It just
bring it on.
I want to ask. You mentioned as well, like when trying to look at this, I guess, like trying to evaluate yourself, where you fall on each thing. I think the question I want to ask, especially maybe it comes also as a leader, how do you, like, what's the suggestion to almost, I guess, evaluate it as objectively as you can without either giving yourself too many or too little because you feel guilty, or you are trying to almost like tell yourself that you're not more of one thing? Is there like a common practice to try and make it as objective as possible?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer to that is to do a 360. And in 360, what that means is that you're looking all around you in whatever group or organization you're in. So what does my boss think? And because sometimes people treat their boss differently than the people that work for them. So I want my boss's point of view, and I want the people that work for me's point of view, and I might want my peers' point of view and my customer's point of view. And so then everybody weighs in on how often is Onno doing these behaviors. And I might think I'm doing it all the time, and they're just not seeing it. And so I think the 360 is the way to get that honest feedback.
Cool. Yeah, getting second opinion is definitely important. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's, if you're really constrained on funds and you want to try to get a free 360, you could ask someone to log into this platform and do the assessment thinking of you. And then so the platform thinks it's a self-assessment, but really the person was thinking of you. They could give you the results. Now you would know exactly what they said. So it may or may not feel safe to do that. But I'm thinking about having my wife do that for me, for example, because I went through one of these at work, and I'm like, but how am I showing up at home? That's pretty interesting. So could get some real reality. Yeah, Blend, did you want to ask something or chime in?
Thank you.
Leader isn't also, we set these lofty expectations of ourselves to change the world and change everything, but changing the world can mean so many different things for so many people. And especially like what Sarah said, changing a family member's life can be the same or as more rewarding as it can be changing hundreds of thousands of people's lives. So I think remembering that you are a leader in your own community as well as the world is a really nice reminder that there's so many different aspects to it, and it's not just in the workforce, or it's not just in a business sense.
Plus one to that. So mixing in Brody's comment here a little bit of, okay, how do I get people's feedback? I think actually your own feedback is probably pretty good. And when I work with clients on this, let's look at the task relationship spectrum, for example, here. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to plot yourself on this spectrum. Are you pretty balanced in between, or do you lean one way or the other? So let me give you a little quick description first of what each one is, because maybe these terms are new. So if you're on the task-oriented side, whether you're on the sort of creative side of task, the healthy side of task, or the more shadow side of task, the controlling side of task, what it sounds and feels like a little bit being on that side is you might have a mantra that I like getting things done, or the end justifies the means. Get the result, doesn't matter what it takes. You might have a very high quality bar, have a sense that being busy is a good thing, and that it's good to be busy, it's important to be busy, that winning is a good outcome, and that's really important. You like giving directions maybe, and you might have a sense that technology and intelligence are some of the more valuable assets at your organization, and that above all, push comes to shove, it's the results that matter. So probably a bunch of you have a task wing. If that's your stronger wing, that's fine. Let's have a look at the other side, and then I'll ask you what your balance feels like. On the relationship orientation side, and again, the healthy and unhealthy versions of this, or effective and ineffective, I could say it that way. If we all get along and the culture is good, the results will take care of themselves. That's what this sounds like and feels like. Let's just take care of our people, and then they'll take care of the results. Famous management theorist Peter Drucker observed that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it's actually the culture that really matters. That's what really affects behavior. So we should focus on that. We're in this together. There's no I in team, and consensus is good too. So maybe it's better to wait around and get more data and get more input until we get consensus. I might think that people are the most valuable asset in an organization. And I might think that push comes to shove, it's the feelings that actually matter the most, not so the results. So if I'm really in that camp, I'm going to be way down here on the relationship wing. If I'm on the task side there, if I feel somewhat balanced, that's fine. And it's also possible, considering both your healthy and unhealthy tendencies, that neither feels true for you. And you might be part of this third wedge that I haven't talked about yet down here. But if neither feels true for you, maybe I can talk about that wedge after we get to vote here. So instructions, for me, the most interesting part of this model is what I'm about to share now. Because let's say you identify that you're a little too task-oriented and maybe you should be more relational. That could start to sound a bit like a New Year's resolution, depending on how you frame that. Like it's not in your instinct and it's not in your nature, but you want to be a better listener because you see, you know that that's important and you saw that all over the slide. Okay, so I should just be a better listener. Okay, by force of willpower, I could try to be a better listener, but my internal system and my internal makeup is not wired for that. And so you're going to lose that willpower battle in just a few weeks. So better, I think, to understand how your internal system is wired. And then if you can modify and upgrade that, then you won't have the internal tension as much, and it'll become easier to do these other more creative behaviors. Does that make sense as a hypothesis, as a direction? And I see this with a lot of my coaching clients, that once they get a sense of their reactive type, so I'm back to the Zoom now on the Miro board, if you want to join the view here. I think I can even ask everybody to come view me here. I want to give you the quick tour of the reactive half, and then you can customize this for yourself. On the task side, you see here in the middle of the circle, there's a thing that says identity. Let me just highlight that. So at the center of this leadership circle, both effective and ineffective, is our identity. And so if we're on the identity and task side, what's happening here, if you can look at my hands on the screen, we all have an identity and we all have certain results that we generate. And we're a little too fused with our results when we're on this side. And so now if you threaten my results, you just threaten my identity. And does anybody like having their identity threatened? No, I don't think so, right? So we go into fight, flight. This is like the animal bottom half of the brain here. So we do whatever it takes to clear that threat. And that's why this is a reactive pattern and why we call it that. And so there are a couple of different flavors of that. There's, I am the quality of my results. So I'm a perfectionist. And if my name is on that slide, and if it's not perfect, then it's going to get back to me, and we can't have that. So fix the slide. It has to be right. I'm going to double check it. It's going to take me 45 minutes to write an email that I should have written in 10 because I need to choose every single word perfectly. You can feel how this is not going to be very efficient leadership. I am the volume of my results. So I am going to exist, and I'm going to get ahead in this world by cranking out a lot, and I'm going to outwork people. That's going to be my survival strategy. It kind of works. You can get results doing that. It just doesn't scale very well. And it's hard when you start leading others because you want them to work just as hard, but then they don't, but then you take over. So you see there are problems there. I am my title, and I've got to be moving up constantly in the organization. Otherwise, I'm done for. And then autocratic sounds like, look, I know how to do this better than any of you. So if you'll just shut up, please, and do it my way, we'll all get out of here on time. Okay, any questions? No? Good, go. That's so more command and control, sort of militaristic style. You can get results doing this stuff. It just doesn't feel very good, and you don't get those feelings that we had early on, and it doesn't scale very well. So if you were on the task side of the spectrum, maybe some of that resonated with you. I want to speak to the folks who were self-aware that they're more on the relationship side of the spectrum, because you might have a similar feeling here between identity and relationships. So now I have my identity, I have my relationships, and those two are really fused together. And so if my relationships are threatened in any way, I feel threatened, and I don't like that. So I don't enter into those conversations. So what this looks like is I probably don't rock the boat very much because I don't like to ruffle feathers, and I just follow the rules, and that way everybody's safe and happy. So I'm conservative. I might say yes and go along with other people's ideas because I don't want to hurt any feelings. So yeah, sure, let's do it your way. That's fine. We'll do it your way. Next time, maybe we'll do it differently. Belonging. You can imagine if a leader says boldly, we're going this way. Who's with me? And then nobody comes. Nobody's with me? Okay, well then maybe let's not go. That can be scary, and it might not lead to effective leadership. And if we're more passive, we might wait. Just wait for consensus, wait around. We might need a little more information. You see Brody's revealing here the behind the boxes, what that sounds like and feels like. So if these are your issues, going across the circle to being strategic and decisive and visionary, that's going to be really hard. if you think that your survival depends on people liking you. So no New Year's resolution, no amount of willpower is going to make that happen. We have to look at this and say, okay, where did I learn that being liked was the right way to go and the only survival strategy? Because not everyone seems to have that. If you look around, certainly not everyone has that. So I made that up. Okay, well, if I made it up when I was 9, maybe now that I'm 30 something, 40 something, I could change that. You know, relationships are important, but they're not my identity. Okay, and if I can really inhabit that, now I can imagine pushing a little bit, and I can imagine engaging in a little conflict, and that's okay. Is this making sense? Can I get a thumbs up?
Yeah, I think, Onno, we've got one
somebody?
question. Edwina, I think you've got
Yeah.
a question, I think.
Edwina, sure.
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to point out, as you mentioned about your relationships, oftentimes are tied to the financial component of you being able to be a leader, knowing that
Sure.
money is involved. And so when money is involved, it really does affect, like, for instance, your paycheck, or it affects your scholarship, or it affects you being able to grow or move forward. And so I think for me, it's always a struggle to try to figure out, how do you create a balance between knowing that you understand the leadership components, but how do you understand the added challenges and navigate those when money is involved?
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say to that remember, there's a percentage scale here. And so being likable and being pleasing and going along with people, that's fine up to a point. And it's actually a very smart strategy, and it might be the right thing. The problem comes when that becomes our only strategy, or we feel like that's necessary, but it's actually not. We're just making up. We're just stuck that we feel like that's really the only way. So if we're taking it to extreme, that's when we get in a problem. So if you can look at your situation kind of clear-eyed and say, that's actually what's needed right now, then great. Then you're being more conscious about it. And I would say it's not a reactive survival strategy. Yeah. Sesame, did you want to ask a question too? Oh, you were off mute for a second. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, can hear you.
Yeah. I'm asking concerning the reactive, but will it not drive to cohesive?
I didn't catch
Like
that. Sorry. One more time.
I mean, on the reactive, I mean, will it not drive to cohesive? Because cohesive is somehow autocratic and drives to punishment more often. So can you take me into that?
I'm not following. There's a word in there I'm missing. Brody,
Do you mean cohesive? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, the word
Pardon?
cohesive was throwing me off.
Yeah.
I don't know what you mean by cohesive in this case. To me, cohesive means sticking together.
Yeah.
So stay for the Q&A and maybe we can get into this. I'd like to get an answer for you. Let me finish off the tour here, actually. And if Prince, if you're able to hold that question for a little bit. I think the third area that we get hung up is a different survival strategy, where we decide at a young age that my identity is tied to my ideas, actually, and my intelligence. And so I'm going to survive by being the smartest person in the room. And I might join the bridge club, or I might join the chess club, or go to the science Olympiad. And in any given room, as long as I can establish that I'm one of the smartest people, I'll be safe. So I may not be likable. I may not be the class clown or the homecoming king or queen or something. I may not get the best results, be the best athlete, something like that, but I'm smart. And that's going to be my thing. And that's okay. It's okay to be smart. Nothing wrong with that. If we're taken a little too far, though, it can come off as critical. Because one way to establish the intellectual high ground is to shoot 6 holes in someone else's idea. And now I have the high ground. It can come off as arrogant, because I might name drop that I went to this university, or I had this success, or I had this, or we sort of bullying for status. It's close to autocratic, but it's a little bit different here. Autocratic really wants to get the results. It wants the power for the results. Arrogant is more interested in just being seen as okay or as top. And if you don't listen to someone with high protective, they'll just pull back and bail on you. Fine, go ahead and crash and burn. I don't care. So a lot of engineers that I work with and that I coach have this pattern, because engineering, you get to be right, and you have the one right answer. And if you get it first, you're the man. A lot of lawyers have this because they like to go back and forth until someone's right. A lot of doctors and physicians I work with have this as well, because you get to be the expert and you get to be right. And it gets in the way of effective leadership, because eventually people say, well, why am I even here? You know the answers, you're the smartest person in the room. Why don't you just do everything? And now you don't have the engagement. Right? So if you have the tendency to jump on this pedestal, which I do sometimes, know that it's going to have an impact and try to get under, why do I have this pattern? Where did I come up with that this was the right idea and was a good idea? Did I see this modeled somewhere? So there's some inquiry, some deeper inquiry that can help lead to answers there.